The millionaire's son had been in a coma for years, until the day the new black housekeeper did the unthinkable. The Montclair castle stood like a monument to opulence, grand chandeliers, marble floors, and tall windows letting in the morning light like liquid gold. But behind these polished walls reigned a silent tragedy. Max Montclair, 8 years old, only son of millionaire Philip Montclair, had neither spoken nor laughed, nor opened his eyes for more than 3 years. The accident had happened on a rainy afternoon. A car had skidded, a sharp scream, then silence. They had pulled little Max's body from the wreck, alive, but unresponsive. Since then, his room had become nothing but a place of mute despair. Humming monitors, drawn curtains, the heavy atmosphere of hope never fulfilled. The doctors spoke with carefully chosen terms, diagnosing a persistent vegetative state. Philip had devoted fortunes to every possible treatment, the best neurologists, advanced therapies, experimental programs. Everything had failed. The child survived in the shadows, cared for by a succession of nurses and caregivers who always ended up leaving, defeated. The castle staff had learned not to mention Mr. Max. It was like evoking a ghost that still haunted the corridors. Then, one heavy summer morning, Isabella arrived. She wasn't what one expected, a black woman in her 30s, in an impeccable navy blue housekeeper's uniform, white apron carefully tied at the waist. She didn't have the dry tone of a nurse, nor the mechanical politeness of a therapist. She moved with quiet dignity, her dark eyes calm but attentive. Philip had hired her for household tasks, nothing more. Polish the floors, keep the dining room spotless, dust rooms that no one visited anymore. She learned of Max's condition through whispers in the kitchen. But unlike the others, she didn't see him as a lost cause. One afternoon, passing by his room, she entered. The air was cool, sterile, almost dead. Max lay there, pale on his white sheets, his blonde hair falling over his forehead, his chest rising gently to the rhythm of sleep. Isabella pulled a chair near his bed. "Hello, Max," she said softly, as if addressing a child who was pretending to sleep. "My name is Isabella. I'll be here from now on." She didn't expect an answer, but her intuition told her not to stop talking. She returned every day after her chores, reading him stories, talking to him about the weather, humming lullabies that her own mother used to sing. She brushed his hair, adjusted his blankets, placed a fresh flower in a small vase each day. The weeks passed. For the others, nothing changed, but Isabella noticed tiny signs. A slight tremor of his fingers when she read a funny passage, a minimal movement of his lips when she sang. She mentioned it to the steward. He sighed. "Miss Isabella, we've all thought we saw signs before. It never lasts." But Isabella was stubborn. One evening, Philip came home earlier than expected, still dressed in his immaculate dark suit. He heard humming from down the hallway. He followed the sound and stopped in front of Max's room. Isabella was sitting near the bed, holding the boy's limp hand in hers, whispering softly, "What are you doing?" His voice was dry, more from habit than anger. Isabella looked up but didn't let go of Max's hand. "I'm talking to your son." "He can't hear you," Philip said, entering. "Doctors don't know everything," she replied softly. "Sometimes people just need someone who refuses to give up." Philip stared at her, torn between skepticism and the strange strength that emanated from her quiet conviction. He wanted to dismiss her words, remind her that he had spent millions on specialists who had given up. But the way she looked at Max made him hesitate. One Wednesday afternoon, the impossible happened. Isabella had just closed The Little Prince when she felt a stronger pressure in her hand. Her breath caught. "Max," she whispered. His eyelids trembled, his lips parted. A hoarse, broken sound escaped. One word. "Hi." Isabella's heart leaped, her eyes blurred with tears. "Oh, Max." At that moment, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Philip appeared in the doorway, his phone in hand. He froze, the device slipping from his fingers. He stood motionless, eyes wide. Max, his pale blue eyes that he hadn't seen open for 3 years, was blinking, focusing, finding the world again. Philip's throat tightened painfully. "Max," his voice broke. The boy blinked, a fragile smile stretching his lips. "Dad." The sound was weak, scratchy, but it was his voice. Philip, hearing this, almost fell to his knees at the edge of the bed, his trembling hand stroking his son's cheek, as if he feared he would disappear if he let go. "I'm here, buddy. I'm here." Isabella stepped back slightly, her heart pounding wildly. She had always believed Max could come back, but seeing him, feeling him alive again, was almost too much to bear. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't want to intrude. She had done what she had come to do. But Philip turned to her, his face covered with tears, his voice broken. "How? How did you do this?" Isabella hesitated. "I didn't heal him. I simply loved him, as if he mattered." Those words struck Philip right in the heart. For 3 years he had thrown money at the problem, machines, medications, experts, believing that love alone was useless without results. But now the results were there, and he was breathing, speaking, looking him straight in the eyes. Over the weeks, Max's recovery became the beating heart of the castle. Each day he regained strength, lifting his head, sitting up, smiling more. Isabella remained his anchor, patient, gentle, helping him with his little exercises, giving him homemade soup, telling him stories. When the pain of rehabilitation brought tears to his eyes, she stayed there, firm and reassuring. Philip, for the first time in years, stayed home more. He began joining Isabella during sessions, awkwardly at first, then with growing devotion. He learned to support his son in his hesitant steps, to celebrate every tiny victory. Gradually they stopped being a grieving father, a broken child, and a hired housekeeper. They became something more whole, a family. One autumn afternoon, all the staff, relatives, and even Max's doctors gathered in the sunroom. The doctors admitted having no scientific explanation for his progress. Max, dressed in a yellow sweater and jeans, stood wobbling between Philip and Isabella. He smiled and took 3 steps without help before collapsing into Isabella's arms. The room burst into applause, but Philip's eyes never left Isabella. When the noise subsided, he declared, "I hired Isabella to clean my house, but she cleaned something much more important. She dusted off my heart and gave me back my son." Isabella's eyes widened, uncertain what to answer. "I can never repay what you've done," Philip continued, "but I'll spend the rest of my life trying." He turned to Max. "Remember, my son, the greatest miracles don't always come from money or medicine, but from someone who refuses to give up." Isabella swallowed hard, holding back tears. "I didn't do it for a reward, Mr. Montclair. I did it because he's a child who deserved to have someone in his corner." A few months later, Max was running on the lawn chasing a kite, laughter echoing in a once silent estate. Philip watched him from the terrace, his chest swelling with pride. Isabella sat next to him, a cup of tea in hand. "You know," Philip said, looking at her, "I used to think the world was built on contracts, business, and numbers. But now I think it's built on moments like this." Isabella smiled gently. "It's built on love, Mr. Montclair. It always has been." That evening, the sun setting behind the hills, Philip walked through the castle. The air seemed lighter, warmer. In Max's room, the vase next to the bed still contained a fresh flower, Isabella's quiet tradition. He touched the petals and whispered, "Never again will I take life for granted." For the first time in years, Montclair Castle was no longer just a house, it was a home, because a woman had dared to enter, look at a silent child, and believe in the impossible. If this story touched you, don't forget to click like and subscribe to Stories That Matter to discover more moving, intense, and surprising tales. Tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love reading your messages. See you very soon. Stay kind, stay curious, and keep following us.